Next up, we have Archeops. Generation 5 was, in many ways, a creatively fertile soft reboot and re-examination of Generation 1. As such, Archeops is a spiritual successor to Aerodactyl. We love us some good Pokemon trivia on False Swipe Gaming, and Archeops is a veritable treasure trove of such fun facts. Of course, Archeops is based on the Archaeopteryx, once believed to be the earliest of all birds. Thus, Archeops is the first bird Pokemon. However, the real fun is its base stats, whose trivia resemble that of the delightful Spiritombs. Archeops' base stat total is 567, which is completely unique in the Pokemon world. Also unique is the fact that Archeops' base stat total matches its national Pokedex number. Why 567? Well, because 567.9 is the Dewey Decimal number for feathered dinosaurs. And we could go on and on about the delight that is Archeops' inspiration and design, but we have to start the video eventually, so we'll just refer you to its Bulbapedia trivia section instead. And today we will be examining how Archeops performed in the competitive scene. And so we ask, how good was Archeops actually? And in this video we'll be going over these competitive formats. On the first day of Black and White, Archeops looked like one of the most terrifying new Pokemon, and that was really saying something considering the many behemoths being introduced alongside it. Yes, trainers' first response to Archeops was that of fear. Here was an Aerodactyl-esque Pokemon with a base attack stat of 140. And forget being stronger than Aerodactyl, this thing was stronger than Salamence. Sure, it wasn't quite as fast as Aerodactyl, but it was still a speedster in its own right. It was as fast as Latios of all things. And what's that? It had several incredible offensive moves that make Aerodactyl jealous too. Sure, why not give this monster U-turn and actual flying stab and acrobatics and stab head smash? Wow. And oh sure, whatever, it didn't have rock head to prevent recoil, who cares? Something this strong would definitely be worth it. Hey, what was its ability anyway? Defeatus. When this Pokemon reaches half its health, its attack and special attack are cut in half. And this ability on a Pokemon with both paper thin bulk and a stealth rock weakness? Yikes, never mind. It can't even use head smash to its full potential. It will have its own attack from the recoil damage. That drawback marked a particularly special low. Looks like Game Freak wanted to add another to Slaking and Regigigas' ranks of the teased. They made Archeops pretty much the worst. They wanted to make a cool new Aerodactyl, but they Britta'd it. Okay, that's a slight exaggeration. Archeops was indeed disappointing relative to its stats, and was instantly added to the Ruined by its Ability Hall of Fame. However, unlike the normal types it shared this classification with, it was still able to find use. Certainly not in OU, and UU was beyond its reach as well. Some players messed around with a Stealth Rock Suicide lead, since it could use its great speed to endeavor the opponent down to 1 HP after getting up rocks. However, this was a bit too specific and didn't see much use, but it was able to find a place in RU. Its biggest problem was having to compete with none other than Aerodactyl. Aerodactyl was a great Pokemon in RU, and not least because it was a great offensive Moltres switcher. Archeops' poor bulk meant it could not replicate this role, nor would extra bulk help much when switching into Moltres would probably knock it into Defeatus range, thus removing much of its threat level. A problem Aerodactyl of course did not have. However, what Archeops did have over Aerodactyl was absolutely monstrous offensive potential. Sure, actually getting it onto the field unscathed was a logistical nightmare, on par with planning a group project at school, but with the abundance of switch moves on some of the tier's best Pokemon, notably Rotom and Rotomose Volt Switch, it was at least doable. The difficulty was potentially worth it once Archeops finally hit the field. Its huge attack stat was put to use with a terrific stab combination with wide super effective and neutral coverage between Stone Edge and Archeops, the latter making perfect use of Flying Gem. With its excellent special attack stat, it could also effectively run Earth Power or Heat Wave to destroy the tier steel types like Steelix, Escavalier, and Ferroseed. Its last move was up for grabs. It could run Head Smash as a pseudo explosion, it could maintain momentum with U-turn, or it could even run Roost, potentially taking advantage of the switches to work against the peril of falling into Defeatus range. Speaking of, its Stealth Rock weakness could even be assuaged with Rapid Spin, and the excellent Cobbletop naturally fit onto the offensive teams running Archeops. So the bird was far from the most splashable Pokemon in the tier, but it was worth the effort it took to make it work. And so Arceus carved out a solid niche for itself in Gen 5 RU. Generation 6 was generally kind to Archeops. Sure, it didn't care for the loss of gems, but the addition of a new stealth rock clearing technique in Defog made up for that, especially since Archeops could potentially make use of the move itself, allowing it to provide some utility for its team. Even the power creep wound up working in Archeops' favor. Sure, it couldn't keep up an RU anymore, but it made up for this by becoming one of the best Pokemon in NU. Its primary set was the itemless attacker. Its dual stabs returned with a vengeance, with Stone Edge and Acrobatics ripping through much of the tier. Physically defensive Pokemon like Steelix, Rhydon, Mawile, and Garbodor got dropped by Earth Power. It preferred Roost as its last move, doing as much as possible to stay out of Defeatist range, because when it did, it was an absolute monster. It took perfect advantage of NU's significantly lower overall power level, outspeeding and pummeling pretty much everything. Archeops wasn't just good because it was an offensive terror either, though it certainly enjoyed brutalizing the tier. It could also take on an effective role as a defensive support Pokemon. Yes, that's right, bulky Archeops was now reality. Its typing offered it some valuable resist, and with EV investment, Archeops could actually switch into many of the tier's plentiful normal, fire, and flying types. It was excellent at switching into Pyroar and Charizard in particular, an invaluable trait for many balanced teams. Its great speed and solid power even without attack investment let it act as an effective utility check against the offensive metagame in general. Bulky Archeops could even choose to run Defog to further support its team. It wasn't meant to be relied on to consistently relieve hazard pressure for its team, given its poor matchup against common stealth rockers, but it was definitely an effective method of extracting even more value out of bulky Archeops in many matchups. Plus, it had a terrific matchup against spiking Garbodor. Archeops still wasn't done, though it was a great lead for hyper offense teams. Its best trait was the fact that it completely dominated the insanely popular Xatu, which would instantly be KO'd if it tried to pick a fight. Thus, Archeops consistently set Stealth Rock up quickly, while easily denying opposing hazards through its great speed and taunt, which also prevented any defog attempts. It could even deny Kabutops' rapid spin by sacrificing itself through head smash recoil, using it much like an explosion. Archeops was excellent at pushing early damage on the opponent too. It could consistently use Endeavor from 1 HP, and worst case, its head smash was good for a decent chunk of damage. Overall, Archeops outright excelled in a variety of roles. It fit onto pretty much every style of team and was consistently an outstanding in-game performer, and as such, it firmly entrenched itself as one of the very best Pokemon in ORAS NU. Power Creep knocked Archeops down another tier in Generation 7. This time it found itself in PU. However, once again, this was to its benefit, as it quickly established itself as a prime PU Pokemon. Right from the start, it proved to be one of the best Pokemon in the tier, a force both in the team builder and the battle. Its ever-reliable combination of dual stab and special coverage moves effortlessly tore through the PU metagame's low base stats, especially since it was one of the fastest Pokemon around. Sure, Archeops needed some help hitting the field, but seeing as how easy it was to use Pokemon with switch moves, that wasn't asking for much at all. Plus, in Ultra Sun and Moon, it even got some valuable help in the avoiding defeatist department by virtue of increased defog distribution, assisting immensely in its eternal fight against Stealth Rock. Archeops was consistently excellent. In fact, some players thought it was a little too excellent at exerting pressure against pretty much everything. With a taunt roost set preventing recovery, it absolutely dissected stall. However, what made it particularly fearsome is that unlike most stall destroying specialists, it did so at no cost to its performance against offense. With the same set, it blazed past faster teams and ripped them apart as well. Sure, balanced teams had checks to its standard set like Regirock, Carracosta, and Ferroseed, but the ease with which Archeops could lure them in and blast them apart was dangerous. It toyed with special sets whose powerful Focus Blast would drop Regirock and Carracosta, whose Heat Wave would destroy Ferroseed, who would even go so far as to use Hidden Power Grass to crush Gastrodon, who already had to play a dangerous game to stay alive against the hit and run tactics of the standard taunt set. Speaking of, Archeops didn't necessarily need to change its set to get past checks like Mesprit and Regirock. Their lack of recovery would often be the difference maker if Archeops decided to play the long game, especially since Regirock was tasked with handling a lot of Pokemon, meaning the Archeops user could create some terrific combinations that punish the Regirock user's reliance on it. As if that wasn't bad enough, Archeops got a nice indirect buff when PU lost a solid check in Palossand to tearing shifts, and thus became even more difficult to handle. We haven't mentioned how annoying Archeops can be with U-turn either. Talk about effortlessly pressuring your checks and doing so while easily maintaining offensive momentum at that. Sure, it had some detractors, and there are a few abilities more debilitating than Defeatist after all, but in spite of such a hindrance, Archeops was absolutely dominant, both in the way it sliced through teams in battle and in the pressure it placed on team builders to pack a dedicated check to it. Thanks to its speed, power, and coverage, it was very difficult to just quote-unquote play around it, like one would most offensive threats. As such, Archeops eventually wound up banned from PU. It was never able to break from its PUBL status. It was incapable as an offensive threat in the severely power-crept NU, and it was inferior to both Aerodactyl and Lycanroc as a suicide lead. Nevertheless, the 7th generation was undoubtedly Archeops' best yet, as it had dominated a tier to the point of needing to be banned. Archeops absolutely adored Generation 8's edition of heavy-duty boots. At long last, it wouldn't need to worry about Stealth Rock knocking it into the fetus range. But wait, wouldn't holding an item ruin the power of acrobatics? Not to worry, Gen 8 also gave Archeops excellent new flying stab in Dual Wing B. It took Archeops a while to break through Dexit, but when it was released into the Crown Tundra, it dropped to PU and once again took its place as a fixture of the tier. It was difficult to wall because it wasn't enough to take a few hits from it while Archeops got worn down. Now that Archeops was wearing boots, which is a great mental image by the way, its answers needed to have longevity. The likes of Regirock and Gigalith simply wouldn't do it at all, especially when Archeops got into a groove with switch move using teammates like Volt Switch Lantern and U-Turn Whimsicott and Rabombi. As such, in the early stages of the metagame, it was tough to be safe against Archeops without a Sandaconda. Archeops had an excellent one-on-one matchup against popular offensive Pokemon like Toxicroak, Heliolisk, Absol, Serena, and pre-banned Virizion, while most neutral offensive Pokemon couldn't handle the power of its Stone Edge. This meant it effortlessly threatened huge swaths of aggressive teams that paired these Pokemon with each other, right from Team Preview. Eventually, the metagame slowed down a bit, and new Pokemon that were able to withstand Archeops' assault rose in popularity. Palossand and Quagsire were Sandaconda level sturdy, while although Weezing wasn't a hard counter, it was still able to get the job done for a decent amount of time. Furthermore, Archeops had plenty of solid flying type competition, such as Galarian, Articuno, Charizard, and Scyther. These Pokemon had the noticeable advantage of being flying types that actually resisted fighting, which helped them check Scrafty and Gallade, as well as Passimian while it was in the tier. As Archeops was lacking in this department, as well as being the frailest by far, it had difficulty in both fitting onto a team and in finding opportunity to hit the field in battle. Nevertheless, at the time of this video, Archeops remains a valuable PU Pokemon with plenty of valuable strengths, ensuring it has a solid place in the tier. For example, though it has strong flying type competition, it also defeats all of that flying type competition with ease one-on-one, which translates to many invaluable in-battle advantages. And that's it. So how good was Archeops actually? Well, it's always had to struggle against itself. There are a few Pokemon weighed down by their ability more. However, unlike Slaking and Regigigas, Archeops has been able to bypass this hindrance in all 4 generations it's been in. It started out as a decent RU threat before progressing to impressive performances as one of Gen 6 NU's very best and being so good in Gen 7 PU that it wound up banned. It's turned in another strong performance thus far in Generation 8 PU and doesn't look to slow down anytime soon. And we hope that Archeops sheds its defeatist attitude soon, because who knows how impressive it'd be if it just stopped getting tilted. Thanks for watching, everyone, and as always, if you liked the video and you want to see more, be sure to subscribe to False Fight Gaming for more weekly Pokemon content. And in the comments, I want to know, what do you think about competitive Arceus? What ability would you give it besides defeatist? Whatever it is, let me know in the comments. Also, thank you so much to our patrons for continued support of our videos, and thank you to everyone else watching as well. And follow my crew on these social media platforms. And that's all I got. See you next time, everyone.